You see, so I'm playing that in the key of A. All right, that's the whole point of learning the chromatic scale across the sixth string, is that when I create riffs or I'm playing a song that I like or something like that, I know where I'm at, and here's the most important thing, I can play it in any key. So you see with the shortcut that we're learning right now, I could take that and let's say I wanted to play that exact same lick, that same idea anyway, and play it in a different key. So if I know that G is at the 3rd fret, I can move it down there and play the exact same thing. Okay, want to be in the key of F? Again, if I know where F is, okay, so the pentatonic scales move with the notes that you have on the 6th string with that chromatic scale. Your power chords also move, your bar chords also move, which we've been talking about. So if I took my power chord, for instance, and I played a G power chord, as long as I know where G is on the 6th string, that's where my first finger goes and I make a power chord. Okay? Now, I just want to recap this whole little section here so you really understand how this works. Because the biggest problem that I've always had with students learning the chromatic scale on their 6th string is that they understand the idea, and then they go home and they work on it to a certain degree, but they really don't absorb the information. So for instance, I'll have a student come back and I'll say, okay, so can you find me B? And what they'll do is they'll count up until they get to B, or find me C or D or whatever it might be. And they're always counting up the guitar. What I want you to do is I want you to learn it absolutely, as I've discussed many times before. The most important thing is to truly know where things are, truly know how something works, to be able to utilize it effectively. Okay? So here's the key. We've already talked about how the notes are, and again, I'll run through them real quick here again, how the notes are E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, B, C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E. That's the octave, of course. Now, remember, what we've already discussed is that you need to make sure that you memorize it on the booklet that you have. You memorize those 12 notes. You also remember the B and E shortcut. There's never a B sharp, there's never an E sharp, okay? And yes, there are flats, and we've talked about that too, but the most important thing is learn them one way, and then go back and learn them the other way. Okay, learn them all as sharp, so you never have to question, well, does this note have a sharp or not? The B never gets a sharp, and the E never gets a sharp. So if you memorize those across the board, but here's the shortcut to that whole thing. If you think about the odd-numbered frets on your guitar, 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9. Now, regardless of what kind of guitar you have, whether it's an acoustic or an electric or anything like that, you've got dots on your guitar more than likely. Now, you might not have them on all your frets. Like if you look at my guitar right now, of course, I don't have a dot on the 1st fret. Most guitars don't, although some guitars do. And some don't even have a dot on the 3rd fret, but you can still think of it as the odd numbers. 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9. So our visual shortcut to memorizing these notes would work like this. You have to know that the 6th string when you pluck it is E. Okay? The 1st fret then would be F. And again, because there is no E sharp, right? So for the rest of your life, this note right here is going to be F. Now here's where it gets cool. 3rd fret is G. 5th fret is A. 7th fret is B. So if you didn't know your guitar neck before we ever started this first lesson here, you'd already know the notes on your guitar, at least half of them anyway. So E, F, G, A, and B. And what I always have my students do is work on a couple things. First of all, they'll work on memorizing them like we're doing right now. So F is right here, and G is right here, and A is right here, and B is right here, which is perfect. Then what you do is you stop looking at your guitar, and you start visualizing it in your head, right? So if I say F, you think 1. If I say G, you think 3, right? You're visualizing where they are. Because there's really 2 elements to this. Number 1 is the notes on the guitar, which we obviously need to know. But the other thing we obviously need to know is where are the frets? Sometimes when students are learning how to play, I might say, okay, go to the 15th fret, and they don't know where the 15th fret is. They have to count up, or go to the 10th fret, and they have to count up to find 10. Now, if you already know that, that's awesome. But if you don't, that's why this really comes in two parts. The first thing is knowing the notes and correlating that with the fret number that it's on. So F and 1 are the same thing. G is 3. A is 5. B is 7. Okay? So you'd already know half your guitar. Okay? 1, 3, 5, 7. F, G, A, B. The 9th fret is the one where it gets tricky. Okay, at the 9th fret, this note is actually C sharp. Because if you remember, at the 7th fret, this is B, and B to C doesn't have a half step. So 7 is at the 8th fret, and D is at the 10th fret. Now please keep in mind that the dots are not put on the guitar to accommodate the notes of the 6th string. They're just there as visual tools for you and I to use to do whatever it is we're going to do. In this case, memorizing the notes on the 6th string. So there is no obligation for the notes to match the dots, right? We're just trying to figure out an easy way of memorizing this. So we have F, G, A, B, C, and D. That's the big one right there, C and D. They surround the 9th fret. F, G, A, B, C, and D. Okay? So what you have to remember about this last dot, this last single dot, is that the notes C and D surround that dot. So F, G, A, B, C, and D. 1, 3, 5, 7, 8, and 10. 1, 3, 5, 7, 8, and 10. Over and over and over, you just tell yourself that. 1, 3, 5, 7, 8, and 10. So when you have time, like let's say again, we've discussed how to practice when you're not at home or you don't have your guitar available, you can always visualize, right? So if you think, well, what's at 7? B. What's at 10? D. What's at 3? G. You see? So now, if I wanted to play a song with power chords, for instance, using the power chord, if I knew my song needed D, I can hit up to the 10th fret. My first finger goes on the root, which is D. If I need G, I go down to the 3rd fret because it's G. Okay? So now we're adding logic, or theory, of course, to what we already understand visually, these power chords and bar chords and pentatonic scales and all these various things. This is G forever. So if I wanted to play a G minor pentatonic scale, it's going to start on this note. If I want to play a G power chord, it's going to start on that note. If I want to play a G bar chord, it's still going to start on that note. Okay? So the next comment that people make is, well, that is true, that is G, but aren't there many other places that you can play things across the guitar? And the answer is absolutely. You can play pentatonic scales all over, or bar chords all over the place. There are Gs everywhere. But you need to start with one, and then start learning everything else. Okay? That's one of the reasons why people get so confused, is because they learn a little bit of something, and then a little bit of something else, and a little bit of something else, and they don't truly absorb that initial element. And that really is the focal point of this whole theory course, is to get you to understand that each piece that we discuss is something that you need to take in, okay? You need to ingest it, and you really need to make sense of it, okay? So the notes on the 6th string are so important to us because they generate our bar chords, our power chords, and our scales, and not just pentatonics, but all of our scales. Okay, anything I want to play that is centered around the note G is going to come from the 3rd fret, as long as I know that in my head. So if somebody says, okay, this song is going to be in the key of C sharp, this is where it gets cool. Once you've learned the notes F, G, A, B, C, and D are shortcut, and you've really fully absorbed that idea, now you can think logically. If this is F, and this is G, which we know, what's in between there? F sharp or G flat. Okay? So again, kind of recapping, if we go back to the way I used to teach this, I used to teach all 12 notes, and then people would try and memorize those, but they'd have a hard time remembering which ones had sharps or which ones had flats. If you just memorize 1, 3, 5, 7, 8, and 10, F, G, A, B, C, and D. If there's a gap in between, that gap is going to give you F sharp or G flat. Or in this case, G to A right here, G sharp, A flat. A to B is right here, A sharp, B flat. Okay, that's referred to as an enharmonic. When you have two notes that have different names, but they give you the same pitch, F sharp and G flat are an enharmonic. Okay? As guitar players, we can call that either one. It doesn't make any difference. We're going to produce the same sound. Okay? So that's what I want you to think about in this segment is how to memorize those notes across the 6th string like that.